After decades of warfare, the 5 tribes, the Tistador, are united under the implacable rule of the warlock king of the Hureth. But the price of peace is a pact with a hidden power whose motives may be deadly. To the south, the expansionist kingdom of Lether has devoured all lesser neighbors, except the Tistador. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host Liam, aka Hambar, and today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of Steven Erikson's Midnight Tides. Midnight Tides is a 2004 novel and book 5 in Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson, and I wanted to start with this quote from Stephen R. Donaldson. He says, "It is also a scathing and compassionate commentary on how the U.S. economy runs." Now we'll talk a little bit about that later. So a 2-part prologue starts the story. We see an ancient battle of the Kachan Jamal. Sorry, I'm going to butcher that. But their sky keeps falling after an assault from the Tistador and the Tistandi forces. The character we follow is the Adur ruler, Skambandari, as he flies in his dragon soul-taken form. Silchas is the ruler of the Andi, who have fared worse than the Adur. And their conversation we learn Skambandari for the sundering of Gerald Emerlane. The Adur then betray the Andi, and he hopes to gain control of this new world by killing Anomander, who he thinks gone. Really just a whole bunch of stuff I don't really know what's happening or going on. We then see a Jagged asked by some elder god, rather, to preserve the field of battle in ice. And then there's also a Withal, or rather his name is Withal, the sword maker in the year 1159 of Burned Sleep, is the only survivor from the city of Mekros. He is tasked by a fallen god to forge a sword. Now, this is the setup, of course, and it's a very interesting one. It's not the most interesting prologue I feel like we've had in the series. It is very epic, though. But this book has been described as a tragedy, and even more apart from the first 4 books than, say, Dead House Gates was to Gardens of the Moon. This is a new continent with new people. There's only one character, really, that is the same. You could argue maybe a couple others, but that's Troll Sengar from House of Chains, right? And this is his story, so this takes place before House of Chains. Part 1 gives us a sublime opening of the Tistador life. Troll Sengar goes about his life, and we learn of Adur propriety. All seems rather normal and peaceful, except that Troll has seen the human Lethery breaking their treaty with the Adur, and now a new agreement will have to be reached. Of course, this will spell issues. The warlock king of the Adur agrees to meet with him, though some are at the breaking, rather, as a declaration of war. The breaking of this treaty deserves war, right? The other character we get a POV from is Udinas, a Lethery indebted to the Sengar family. He is in love with the witch, he's in love with Witch Feather, another indebted. After Udinas sees a white crow, which he takes as a bad omen, he hastens to stop her from reading the Tiles of the Holds, which is a predecessor to the Deck of Dragons. It basically works the same way. There's a mysterious entity that attacks them, and they are brought into the light of their Adur masters, and there seems to be some connections or power that was unexpected in this experience. Troll with his brothers Fear and Rulad, among others, are tasked to journey to the Ice Plains to retrieve a gift shown to the Warlock King in a vision. Then we have Saren Pedic, a Lethery acquitter who is one of 7, and by the treaty is allowed to enter Adur lands for trading purposes. She is leading Baruch the Pale, when unexpectedly they are joined by Holbedic. He was once a sentinel to the Lethery king. Anyways, this is another part of the conflict between the Lethery and the Tistador. Back in Letherez, the capital, Tehol, Hol's brother, is speaking with his manservant Bug about the new palace. He goes to meet 3 tribal women who want to become rich and realize that behind Tehol's seeming simpleness, he is actually quite clever. Tehol and Bug are actually quite hilarious and remind me some of Fafhrd and Grey Mouser, or even Goblin and One Eye, from their respective series. And then there's the other brother, Bedic brother, Bryce, or Bryce, I'm not sure, who is Finad, a captain of the Royal Guard and the King's champion. He is being questioned by the first eunuch when we meet him about his brothers, but he says he no longer understands them. We learn how the Lethery are descended from the First Empire colonists as well. So that is the novel setup. right? One of betrayal and greed. I know that's a lot, but it is a Malazan novel, and many parts are moving in simultaneity, as is typical. So the obvious conflicts in this book are about how peace can be achieved, and can it be justifiably done with bloodshed. We have the idea that power is a corrupting force. In this case, it leads to arrogance for sure, and that is a huge theme in this book. It seems to be a proper criticism, right, of the elite in our time, I would say, and maybe the system as a whole, you could argue. But with fantasy setting, it's more timeless, and I would say it's safer than any contemporary setting could be for such criticisms. Hence why fantasy is worthwhile. Also, there is the matter of rape. A woman, though a goddess, actually rapes a man, and that is often a subject given little care in fiction, as it is in real life, of course. Also, the rape of the mind is kind of brought up here. The violation of that sanctuary is similar to the violation of the body. The subject of womanhood and manhood is also broached, and the differences in social situations, and with comments like man can never know woman. So it's kind of an idea of looking at this feminist idea of that feminine traits are either constructed or they're inherited. Obviously, the more modern take would be that, well, at least in discourse, the constructivists would, well, it's kind of a given that most people are constructivists in modern discourse for feminism. But, some people would still say there's inherent female traits. So this book came out in an earlier date, so it's kind of a discourse between the two in some ways, but not very heavy. I'm saying that's not a huge theme, I'd say. That's just one I noticed. Also, the idea of pain and it being more real than anything else, besides maybe the thing that ceases pain, seems to be an idea. And characters like Shirk and Kettle are interesting ones beyond their undead natures. Hood doesn't seem to be present here, actually, which is another thing to think about, probably. And then the Holes, as opposed to the Warrens, again, are interesting. They appear rather Neolithic, more than, the early historical vibe you might get from the Warrens, that is. So some might find it slow to start since there is little combat to start, but much intrigue, politics, of course, and setup, which makes sense with a new setting in Cass. It is very, very political this time around. That seems pretty typical of Malazan anyways, though. And we do see some of the Crimson Guard for the first time, which is pretty cool. And a little bit of this book, so you might get this reference if you've read these novels and maybe played the games, but the Tistador remind me some of the Horde from Warcraft. At some parts, it actually seemed uncannily similar. But essentially, this novel is a train wreck in slow motion. You see much of it coming, but it's still quite emotional, and the impact is astounding, I could say. It's not my favorite of the Malazan books, but I still came away from this feeling, well, that I had been entertained and had much to think about still. Anyways, Liam was the IP. Lyceum. I'll catch you next time.